So this is my annual Do I Have a Shirt? And do I know how to make it to Old Trafford? So I do this pretty much every year. Today I succeeded just. So I thought what I'd do is I'd run you through building a large financial market infrastructure security program with like a very, very small team. So this is who I am. For people who don't know who I am, been in the industry 28 years. Was a hacker in the 90s, which is now ancient history. Any book you read about hacker culture says 90s were the heyday, and I feel old as hell nowadays. I've worked in government, media, financial market infrastructure, retail, wealth management, startups. I've done FMIs, I've done some AI stuff. I did augmented reality stuff for Disney in like 2009. So I've been around for a while. And I've obviously tried to cross-train and skill myself, not just to be, a CISO. I've done all the technical bits. I started configuring SendMail servers in my school uniform at the age of 15 in Aberdeen for oil companies, which raised a few eyebrows. So I've been with RTGS for 2 years now. RTGS is, like I said, a startup. We're trying to build, this is it. So basically, right, we're financial market infrastructure, which is cool, right? I'm sure everyone knows what that is. Fantastic, right? No? Nobody knows what that is? All right, some of you probably do. Effectively, what we're doing is we are trying to emulate or create a global settlement fabric. Yet again, more words nobody cares about. Think of it as the telephone connections or network connections, your old RJ45s. We're trying to connect participants from around the globe, so different banks in all different countries use our system to settle transactions in near real time, right? So currently, I work for CLS, if people know who that is. It's one of the biggest Forex, foreign exchange companies in the world. They do currently, I think it's N-2 for settlement. So if you want to settle pounds to dollars, you put it into the system, mitigate settlement risk, and then 2 days later, the banks get their money. RTGS Global, whole point is you do it instantaneously. We use something called atomic locking, which allocates those funds from one participant to the other and passes it through our network. At its simplest form, RTGS Global is a messaging protocol. That's it, right? It passes a PAX message, which is a financial sort of standard, between two different participants. Neat. So what we're kind of doing in this situation, if anyone's familiar with Swift or the payment industry, you have hardware security modules. Now I think they've moved to the cloud as well, right? I used to have to configure those and update the keys, which was fantastic. I got to fly all around the world to punch in half a code while somebody on the other end of a phone gave me the other half of a code, usually while I was in a data center with shitty reception. So the chances of the success of the key going through the first time, near zero. So what we've managed to do with the RTGS system is we've moved that HSM model and that requirement for, either it be hosted by Microsoft or by another cloud provider, whereby you have this reliance on them to manage your HSM. And lots of banks who are doing big transactions do not want you to commingle their funds with other banks for obvious reasons, right? So what we've done is we've created this settlement fabric that has a network connector and a gateway. And those two things go off to and this is a bit that I expect weapons-grade eye rolls. We use the blockchain to create identities. And it's not as woolly as you think, right? So Bank A and Bank B create an identity in the cloud, which is immutable, right? Those identities are then passed down to our network connector, at which point we issue you basically we do key pairing. So if you want to settle between Bank A and Bank B, we create a unique key pair. And then we settle your transactions. So nobody can pretend to be you or the other participant without A, compromising the identity, and also then getting access to the keys, which we rotate every 24 hours. I think currently Swift is every 2 years, or when you get shouted at. So we're trying to up our game there. Now, I'm aware that's a lot of words. And that kind of covers all those bits. One of the things that I didn't mention, which I should, is that we are an entirely closed system. So there is no web interface, thankfully, right? So my attack surface area is, thankfully, very, very small. One of the best things we've found is that by leveraging Microsoft's Azure backbone, we can actually create this global fabric with high availability, resilience, and cover the entire globe without needing to have physical data centers or modules in there. And the only thing that we're asking is our participants or banks create their own Azure subscription, and connect in using our components. Simple, right? So, yeah, Notepad, some sort of benefit. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, there's lots of market benefits, which, as not a finance guy, I'm not really sure of, but I'm told by people who know that it's really impressive. So, this is the slide, right? And I use this one with investors because we are a startup, and you have to explain to investors, what does the cybersecurity team do? And let's be honest, we have zero return on investment, right? Security is not a money-making function of the business, and everyone's about sales and delivery. So what do? Well, we do everything. Every single decision that the business makes has an impact on the cybersecurity or the security element. We cover everything from cloud configuration, automation, which is great. Unfortunately, my security engineer, I think, has written 3,000 lines of code in the last month, and she hates me, but that's fine. She probably did already. We do endpoint security. We're completely remote. We have an office in London that I've been to twice. I hear it's nice, but who knows? Everything that we do is managed and tied in with the Microsoft stack, which, if you'd asked me 10 to 20 years ago, would Microsoft be a leading factor in the security game? I'd have laughed. I'm a full-on Linux, Unix guy. But they're actually doing some good work, which is kind of crazy. We're following all the CIS benchmarks, and this is always a tricky one, right? Because you're always told, follow CIS benchmarks. Does anyone ever implement them verbatim? It's impossible. It doesn't work, right? You can't run a business with a level 1s fully rolled out. And if anyone's got to level 2s in the CIS benchmark, I will buy you a drink afterwards, because that is impressive work. So we also get involved in core service security design. So, we're looking at what components should we be using? What's the coding standard look like? Should we be using Kubernetes? Should we be using something else? What's the correct way to, present these things via Azure Marketplace? Should we be providing bicep scripts, et cetera, et cetera? Penetration testing, we partner with some great people. They penetration test every single component, end to end throughout the entire system, all the way down to our laptops to make sure that we are, as secure as we can be. And one thing that I really want to mention is, I've worked for some very, very old organizations, wealth management one for particular. And the ability to walk into an organization and start from scratch with modern technology without any AS400 mainframe lurking in the background has been amazing. I actually sleep now. It's fascinating. So password managers, you're all aware of what those do. Email security, we actually use 2 different email security solutions for our defense in depth approach. So we've got like Office 365 that sits up front and does its whole email protection piece. And then we've also got Darktrace email security. I'm not going to shill anything, but for me, it honestly is probably one of the better tools that I've ever used. And because everyone in my company has had these from day one, I've not had to weaken the controls. I don't have to put VIPs on special lists. They don't know what they're not seeing because they're not seeing it. The business has no awareness of all the email crap that they are not getting to see. Whereas in legacy businesses, you already have this entire hierarchy in place. And you have certain people who are like, no, I really need that email. So, but it's a phishing email, or it's a promotion, or it's a cold sale. You don't want it, but VIPs always get their way. So I definitely would say and recommend that if you are using like Office 365, definitely look at a dual layer protection for email, because it has made our level of incidents very, very small compared to where we were previously when we didn't have, me and my security engineer worked together at the same place. Her entire day was dealt with phishing emails or reported emails. That's what her entire job was. And they had multiple tools in place, but yet again, they'd had to weaken it and weaken it and weaken it because the business deemed it necessary. Startups start from the scratch, don't have any of those concerns. Here's a big one, and I'm going to focus on this a little bit. So geopolitics has become, let's say, prevalent in the last 2 years. I think the sort of first incursion into the Ukraine, we saw a large amount of people rushing to buy geopolitical modules from the threat intelligence providers, right? Which makes perfect sense. But a lot of that information comes within your sort of SOC bits and pieces, unless you're actually a truly global business or have people who are traveling to regions. We have We are doing a Near East push at the moment. So I have my salespeople going to Tajikistan, Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, all over the place. Geopolitics has now become, like, I would say 90% of my day job is making sure they're safe, making sure that we understand what the threat landscape looks like, understanding what sanctions are coming down, looking at whether or not it's even worth us doing business in those regions. I've moved from cyber into geopolitical sort of threat intelligence and advice. And you know what? I love it, but it's the only way I can do this is because of having a modern stack. We also look at physical security, threat intelligence, all the standard incident detection, security incidents, software updates, awareness training, which was huge like last year. Did everyone get like bombarded by every like cybersecurity awareness learning training provider known to man? I think I got like 3 a day. It's like, yeah, I implemented one 2 years ago and I'm happy with it. But yeah, now we've moved on to Geopol. That's the new hard sell. What else have we got on here? Simulated phishing tests, Intune, firewalls, blah, 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 MFA, insider threat, security, data protection, data sovereignty, and access control. How big do you think my team is? There you go. It's 2. It's myself and a security engineer who will probably stab me after this. But that's fine. We did have a plan. That was 2023's plan, right? But, you know, the world's changed, funding and the climate of, you know, just, recession pretty much, right? So the plan was that we would go from me, who thankfully is technical, and a security engineer, to build out a function whereby we'd have a CISO, security operations function, with a security analyst and a security engineer, and then we'd have the security assurance function with security analysts, dual reporting, and a security governance analyst. And then the future state would have been, they'd become heads of, and we'd have expanded and expanded and expanded. I think my projection for 2025 now is probably about 8 in total, but we'll see. We have to see how the economy goes. But yes, between 2 of us, we look after everything that was on that previous slide, which is a lot, but it's actually doable nowadays. And I'm not saying that having small security teams is great. It's not, because I speak to Chloe on an hourly basis, and it does my head in. I need to write PowerPoints. I'm a CISO. So how does this work going forward, right? And if we think about a modern security business, and I've implemented this a couple of times before in a number of different organizations, what we've got is our security operations guys, which are the people looking at the management of vulnerabilities, monitoring, alerting, BAU security tasks, you know, handle security events, the phishing reports, access control alerts, alerts from detection tools, you know, change requests and reviewers. We're so small we don't have CAB yet, which is so good, but that's coming. Proactive threat hunting, assists in delivery to security strategy, which I have to write every year. Incident event monitoring, provides evidence of security controls, delivers security tools, all the day-to-day busy work, and then reports into the CISO, who then takes all the credit. On the cyber assurance side, these are the guys that do all the stuff I hate, which is write the policies, maintain the policies, ensure we meet the latest standard, tell me about the latest European bank sort of mandate that says you can't have legacy hardware, which we don't, but you guys are in trouble if you do business in Europe. Feeds into security requirements for projects, there's framework tasks, and the compliance monitoring as well, very important. But like, splitting the teams into this way, I find has been massively beneficial in previous organizations. I find that there's a good cross-collaboration and good working between the 2 teams. Having those in different silos, but yet under the same function, has really allowed us to make some pretty significant gains in some older organizations that did not have a mature security model. It's weird, because I've been doing this for 28 years, and me and a couple of people who started at the same time, we continue to go into what I'd say is near greenfield organizations. It's 2023. We're still going in and sitting down and going, okay, tell me about your email secure, okay. Tell me about your network detection. How are you doing patching? What's your time to recover? Where's your backups? And then we just freak out. But we have the same plan and it works, right? So we've been doing this for a while. This model seems to work really well for us. Might not work for you guys, but I found this definitely works for me. Just a quick time check. Okay, cool. Right. core service. So I talked about that whole fabric thing. I bored the crap out of you. I used some words that nobody cares about. But what do, right? How do we make sure that we can go to our regulators, to other banks, to central banks and say, hey, listen, do you know what? We've actually built a fabric that is secure. And we think it's more secure than existing fabrics. So basically what we're saying is that every single message that goes through our gateway and even comes to our gateway must go over TLS 1.2 as a minimum standard, right? All messages must be signed using the key pair. So if Bank A wants to transact with Bank B, they must have a key pair relationship in place. They must have signed those messages and they must exchange those messages, and those messages are then verified. By the way, we're not in the flow of funds either. All we're doing is signing a message between two people to make an agreement to pay either through central bank money or commercial bank accounts. But this is a level of security we're going to try and avoid any sort of issue. Every single transaction also goes to an immutable ledger, not a blockchain, an immutable ledger, same thing. But all right, closed system, like I said. Excuse me. So everything's in Microsoft Azure. You have to use a Bastion, you have to use a jump box, or you use, you can do your integration, full integration into Azure via VPN or private endpoints, right? We're not on the internet. Well, we are, but we're not. You know what I mean? There's no web portal you can go to and say, hey, I'd like to transact $1 million. It doesn't work like that. So all these things we have mandated within our, well, to our engineers, right? My favorite one is like engineers must not have access deployed to any environment outside of DevOps. They hate me. It's fantastic. Every single day they ask, why can't I use my standard work email account, my standard logon to make changes? It's like, no. You have a privileged account. Oh, what's a priv account? Seriously, legitimate question that Chloe was asked about 2 days ago, and the swear words she put forth, I learned something. So in a modern day, people not understanding the need for a standard day-to-day business account and a privileged account. By the way, these engineers are not noobs. They've been around for a while, which leads the question, I haven't asked where they came from, because that would be tempting. So there's definitely a requirement to continue to educate, continue to put tighter and tighter security controls in place. And trying to do this with a team of two has been challenging at best, but we're getting there. I'm going to speed up a little bit. But basically, everything has to be done in the, like, having the ability to follow the security models that are now modern has been fantastic. All right, tech stack, I'll just go through this quickly. I'm not endorsing any of these people, I'm just letting you know what I use, right? So Darktrace, Sentinel, using a third-party Continue. So we have two different seams. We have a seam for the business users, which is effectively, hey, look, anything that happens within our business network. Oh, and also, by the way, we've separated our tenants in Microsoft, which they hate. We can do everything under the same subscription. I'm air-gapping the crap out of that. Our production environment sits in a completely different tenant from the day-to-day usage. Microsoft were like, no, one subscription. No, air-gapped. So we have two seams. So anything that happens on the business side, logged into our business seam. Cool, we can look at that. Anything that happens in our core environment, different seam, different response, different SLAs, different severity. It's expensive, but it works. The investors got it, thankfully. I'm still here, I still have a job, so they're all right with that. Security awareness training, fantastic. We started off, just as a note, every single person that is on the senior leadership is ex-finance, or is finance, right? When we started doing the phishing tests, our failure rate was like 40% of people were like, cool, click, and then creds. Now we're down to about 5%, but that's taken 2 years, and culture is massively important, and we've been hammering it home all the time. Now, I can do scary, and Chloe does nice. So I shout at people, then they go to Chloe and whine about it, and then she makes them feel better, and they follow the security training. All right, cool. So yeah, just on this threat intelligence, again, I kind of touched on, we're leveraging SOC enrichment. So we're not using any of the full-on like threat hunting platforms, etc. We've got a lot of that stuff already covered within the two seams within Microsoft, right? So we're going for the sort of the bare bones threat intelligence piece and just enriching our seams so that we can get a little bit of an indicator of who it is who's trying to hack us, if anyone, is it a false positive, you know, any sort of malware that comes through, etc. So that one's quite self-explanatory. And then independent security testing. So obviously, because of the fact we're trying to be a global settlement fabric, right, there comes with a few additional requirements, right? So we've had everything sort of independently verified by a company that's 6.6, which is made up of a lot of people who are from acronymed organizations. Now, they didn't do any of the physical pen testing. We sat down and we talked them through the entire design, which was my security requirements, and went through the architecture. At the end of that, they came back with a bunch of requirements, such things as, okay, so you have one NTP server, so how do you make sure that isn't modified by a nation state that then changes the settlement time of X to Y to Z? And it's like, okay, cool, let me just try and figure out how the hell to deal with that one. So we've dug as deep as we can into every single aspect to try and make this as secure as possible. Is there still room for improvement? Always. Can never stop. All right. I'm just going to go through this a little bit because, yeah, 1 minute. Oh, crap. All right, geopolitics, really important. You need to do a lot of it. Build a geopolitically resilient business. It's really hard, but it's amazingly beneficial if you can. This is what this should look like. It's awesome. You need to have input from all these people, and then these are the outputs at the bottom. Finally, stories. We're still crap at security. Large media organization, these ones aren't in the news, breached by open directory listing, password details found on the web. Travel agent, GDPR breach, basically, again, open directories, entire web forum just sat there in a text file, apparently. Card processor, owned, ransomware, couldn't recover. Their customer service desk was infiltrated by the hackers, and they ended up reverting people's money. Really bad. Acquisition hell, somebody bought a company. They failed every single one of the OWASP top 10 is 2023. They got totally owned. And finally, more insecure websites. When I started RTGS, I looked at their website and I found an unsecure PHP upload, which allowed me to add a user and destroy their marketing website. That's not why I was hired. Thank you very much.